Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Process. Today, I have another special guest on the show. Her name is Brooklyn, and she has an incredible name. And she is someone that I knew back in my high school days, maybe even before that, honestly. We're both from Red Deer, and we recently reconnected on Instagram. We've been having some amazing conversations. She is working as a counselor, she's got a couple of young kids and the conversation just really started flowing between us. So I decided to ask her to come on the show so that she could share some of her insights and perspectives around what she does. It is an absolutely amazing conversation. I had so much fun talking with her and getting to reconnect with her after all these years. I cannot wait for you guys to hear it. So let's dive in. Hey, Brooklyn, welcome to The Process. I am so excited to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, this is a conversation that we have been having a little bit back and forth on Instagram. And I thought it would be great to bring it to the podcast and have a way that we can capture it and talk about relationships and talk about therapy specifically because you are a counselor and that is what you do. And I'm really excited to dive into this conversation. I think it's going to be just a great way to bring some light to something that doesn't often get talked about very much. But I thought that we could start just by giving the listeners a bit of a background of who you are and how you got into this work of working as a counselor.
Yeah. Well, my name's Brooklyn. I grew up around Red Deer. I am a wife and a mom. I have two kids. Uh, and yeah, I love spending time with my family. And I also love being able to do counseling now. And it's kind of nice because it's like something I can do part-time and still have enough time and energy for my kids. Before counseling, I was a teacher and I really, really did enjoy that. But I felt like it was time to just make a shift. And I'm glad that I did because now my kids get like the best of my energy and teaching is like crazy high energy. And I loved it. But I feel like when you're kind of half-hearted in teaching, it just isn't as fun. So yeah, kind of quit while I was ahead, while I was still enjoying it. And I really found that like I loved supporting kids and their families, but often you would see kind of just areas where it's like, I wish I could do more to help you. And I kind of felt like stepping into a counseling role allowed me to bring the experience that I have from teaching into a new light and to support families in kind of like a new way. So I've really enjoyed doing that.
That's so cool. I love that. And I love that progression as well that you started working in a classroom with lots of kids. And, I do lots of work with kids too as a speech therapist. And I know that a lot of what we do working with kids is actually working with the parents. And so I can see how that natural progression would have kind of taken you over to the counseling where you could really dive in with parents. And you do work particularly with moms, right? Is that often what you're doing? Moms that have maybe just had kids or have
Yeah.
young kids?
Yeah. I work a lot through kind of like all seasons of motherhood. So, like pregnancy, even like fertility kind of related stuff, and the struggles that can come with pregnancy, and even loss. Uh, I work, yeah, with that kind of demographic. And then I also support moms through postpartum, which is another delicate season, and then parenting. And it's funny, people often think like, oh, like to do this or not to do this, like discipline wise, but so much of parenting comes down to like self regulation. And so actually, that's a common theme throughout pregnancy, postpartum, and parenting is like emotional regulation and self regulation probably because it is such a delicate season, it just brings up so much and we can't like ignore it because it's like right in our face. And we lose parts of ourselves, we gain parts of ourselves, but a big thing that's often lost is like the self-care routine. And so when we're not able to do the things that we used to do to take care of ourselves, it's like we can't ignore things or push things down anymore. They just come right to the surface. So emotional regulation and like being in tune with what's actually going on for you is, yeah, a huge part of what I do.
Yeah, I love that. It is so important, and you don't realize how important it is or how confronting it's going to be until you become a parent, and you have to face it because you have this little mirror in front of you that's going to give you all of the emotions. And that was definitely, I mean, still is a massive part of my own journey of becoming a mom. And that's kind of where our conversation started, was because you were telling me about how you're supporting moms through this phase. And I was so fortunate to have an incredible counselor when I was in my early postpartum days. And I'm so grateful that I had support at that time, because it does totally change your entire life. I mean, people talk about it, but you don't realize until you actually go through it. Then you're like, oh, okay, now I get it. And oftentimes then it becomes, you maybe get through that initial newborn phase, or you're drowning in the newborn phase. And then you get hit with, wow, this is my whole life now. So having someone like you to walk women through that is just such a gift, I think. And I think it's such a beautiful area to focus on. And it's amazing. So I love that that's what you're doing, that you're so passionate about it. And in our conversation as well, we started talking about how it's not just about, as the parent, as the mother, and the relationship with their child. It's also about your relationship with your partner, and how are you going through this whole phase of becoming parents, and also maintaining your relationship with your partner, and in the midst of all of that change as well. I also wasn't ready for that. Again, that people talk about it, but you just don't understand until you go through it. And my husband and I we have been in couples therapy for about a year and a bit now, and it has been absolutely incredible for us. And I mentioned this to you, and when I mentioned the kind of therapy that we were doing, you got really excited, and I thought, okay, so this is something you're really passionate about, so let's talk about it. Because like I said earlier, we don't really talk about therapy. We talk about it almost as like it's a very taboo thing, I would say, especially couples therapy. But it is so incredible how much it can help. And so let's talk about it. And I'll just start by saying that the type of therapy that we are doing is called emotions focused therapy. That's right, Brooklyn, right?
Yeah,
That's what it's called.
it's emotionally focused therapy, but it's the same
Okay.
thing. Yeah, it is. It's basically the same. But if
Okay.
you type
Well,
in EFT on Google, sometimes
yeah.
you get tapping, and it's not the tapping thing. It's
Yes,
different.
I did actually. I said that to someone once. They're like, "Oh, you're doing tapping." I'm like, "No."
No.
Though I have heard good things about that, but we are talking about emotionally focused therapy. But do you want to give the listeners just a bit of an overview of what this approach is to therapy? And I think it ties in really well with what you mentioned before around this emotional regulation, and how this really comes to the surface when we do get into a committed relationship, and especially when there's kids in the picture too.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm passionate about emotionally focused therapy. I have read lots of books and taken some courses on it, but I don't feel like I'm like an expert on it or anything. But how I would
That's
explain it,
okay.
how I would explain it is just that it is kind of like getting to the root of things and kind of digging a little bit deeper to see what emotion is coming up for you. And sometimes even they call them primary and secondary emotions. The first emotion that we feel might not even be the thing that we really feel. And so sometimes we go deeper and we're like, oh, actually, I wasn't angry. I was sad. And so even if we can name our feeling, there's still deeper digging to do sometimes. But so often we aren't really aware of what we're feeling. And so in this approach, it's kind of bringing awareness to like, what am I even feeling? And then often alongside that feeling, there's a need. So whether that need is to be seen, to have a nap, to feel heard, like, yeah, sometimes we aren't really in tune with what our needs are. So if we aren't able to be in tune with ourselves, it does get even more complicated when we're trying to communicate that with the partner. So part of it is just doing what I was kind of talking about before, like the self regulation, the self emotional awareness work, and then learning how to communicate that to your partner is kind of a huge part of all of that. And there's obviously a lot more to it. It is attachment based. And so that kind of just looks at kind of like the broader picture of how you see the world based on your experiences in the past and how you show up. And those are actually like quite predictable, which is helpful because so many of us think like, why do I respond this way? Like, I know logically I should not be doing this, whether that's like yelling or withdrawing or, yeah, however it is that you respond. Um, it's like automatic. And so it's pausing to see what's beneath that and
Hmm.
learning how to relate in new ways. So that's a loaded explanation, but that's how I would explain it.
No, it's great. It's great. And I think I love that explanation about, being able to dig deeper from what's on the surface to getting to what is actually going on. We don't talk about that very much or ever. You see what you see and you see your partner behave a certain way, and then that ignites some sort of reaction in you. And then before you know it, you're in what they call in EFT a negative cycle. And the negative cycles are generally quite predictable for any couple. At least that's been our experience in therapy. And even mapping that out has been really helpful. But coming back to the attachment element of it, I think specifically in a partnership, it's not just about your attachment and your own experience, it's about learning the other person's experience, because more often than not, you don't have the same attachment style coming into the relationship, right? Like, am I right to say that the majority of couples tend to have one avoidant partner and one anxious partner? Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, my favorite
Yeah.
thing is about that is if you have two avoidant people, you both just avoid each other, and so then that's why avoidance don't really work out because they would
Yeah.
just forget about each other and be like, "Cool, bye."
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Yeah, there would just be no conflict because they'd both be like, well, we're not going to talk about this. So see you
Yeah,
never, basically.
yeah, exactly.
And then two anxious people would be so intense that they'd probably push each other away as well, because they wouldn't be able to handle both of them being so intense with each other and trying to, doing the protests and all of those kinds of things. But I think giving yourself, like in a partnership or in a marriage or whatever, giving yourself the opportunity to learn about your partner's attachment style and their needs and understanding the function of their behaviors is such an unlock for a relationship, honestly, because instead of, like I said, looking at the person and seeing what they do and going, oh, I can't believe they would do this, they always do this, blah blah blah, now I'm going to react like this and I'm so angry and I'm so pissed off and I'm not going to talk to them for the rest of the night or whatever. You can go, and I'm not perfect at this by any means, but you can go, hang on, it seems like something big's coming up for you right now. What's going on? I want to hear about it. It's important to me, that kind of thing. And even saying that, I'm not great. I'm not great at doing those because it is hard. Like you said, it is automatic. When something happens, you just go straight into your trigger. Like, it is hardwired in your nervous system. But the cool thing about this approach that I've experienced is having the therapist sitting in there with us to help us really put words to our experience and go, okay, so this happened. And what came up for you when this happened? And then really sitting in it instead of rushing through it and getting to the end point. It's sitting in the moment and giving it space. And then undoubtedly something comes up where you hear your partner say something that you're like, I didn't even know that was a thing
Mhm.
for you. I didn't even realize. And then you change from, oh, this to, wow, that makes sense. That makes so much sense why you're feeling like that. And then the whole atmosphere of the conversation is totally different. And I think it's an absolutely magical part of EFT. And I've never seen it in other approaches. Has that been your experience too? Like when you have helped couples kind of facilitate conversations like this?
Yeah, I think when you say like, "Oh, it makes sense why you reacted that way in a fight," until you can get to that point, I don't really think you heard the other person.
Yeah.
And so really like that whole process, I love that you say she just slowed it down, is just like helping hear what the other person is truly saying, because if you do, you would understand. Like, oh, given what's going on for you, your history, yeah, your worldview, your attachment, it makes sense. Your interpretation of what I've just done, um, or what's happened, your perspective, it makes sense. Even if that perspective is like not really what happened. That was a big thing actually for me and my husband. We had to get over like, doesn't matter if my perspective was right.
Yes.
If he it's so dumb, but it's like, if you had that perspective, could you understand why I would feel this way? And then yeah, when you get to the point of like, oh yeah, that makes sense, then I think you're actually able to like look and go, okay, yeah, that was irrational. But for some reason, emotions just like want to be felt. And I think we've had it in our mind that like, if we let our emotions run the show, then they're gonna like take us dangerous places and that's bad. But once you listen to them, then they just like soften and quiet down. And then it's like your logical brain can take over and work out what you're gonna do next and how you actually interpret the situation. So um man, going back to what your actual question was, I find it is incredibly helpful just because um, so often we're not hearing what the other person is actually saying. And this method just helps really like you get heart to heart with your partner.
Yes. That has been probably the biggest thing that I've experienced too. Like you said, to your point, that we think that emotions are bad. If we feel our emotions, we're going to get out of control. But it's weird because we kind of get out of control anyway, just in like a different way, or we have this massive breakdown with our partner because we don't know how to talk about the emotions that are actually there. But even as you said, when you give the emotion space, that helps it quiet down. Like I got chills on my body because I've experienced it. I have been in the room and I have felt that shift happen in real time, and it is incredibly powerful. And when I try to talk to people about this, like other people, if I even mention that my husband and I go to couples therapy, the instant reaction, I mean, they don't necessarily say it, but that look where it's like, "Oh, like, are you guys okay? Are you about to get a divorce? Like, is everything okay?" And I'm like, "No, we're great." And then they're like, "What?" It's seen as a last resort. It is truly seen as like a last ditch Hail Mary. We've been married for 20 years and nothing's working. We basically hate each other. So let's go to couples therapy. Even in the movies, like that's how you kind of see it is we've tried everything, every possible avenue. Ugh, let's go to couples therapy. And then by the time they get there, it's like it's almost, I don't know if it's too late. I mean, I'd love to hear your perspective on this if you've done some work with couples that you've seen kind of come back from this, but like it why do we have to wait until it gets so bad? Why can we not see it like going to the gym, like working on your physical health? Like imagine if we could look at our relationships the same way and go, well, we've been in this relationship for a few years. We both had our own experiences and traumas and crap coming into this relationship. Maybe if we talked about it, we could understand each other better, communicate better, make space for each other's emotions, and then be way stronger, especially when you have kids in the mix too. I think it is, yeah, it's obviously a whole other layer of complexity.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I feel like there's still a lot of stigma around actually probably even like therapy in general, but especially around couples. Like I know for us when I've said like, "Oh yeah, so and so is going to couples therapy," my husband will go like, "Oh, what happened?" Like, like are they
Yeah.
okay? They're going to stay
Yeah.
together? And it's like, "No, no, 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 no." Like I wish we could like back that up and just kind of like normalize like if you have been in a relationship with someone for, well, probably any amount of time something's going to come up, but like any amount of significant time. But like a year or 2 years or 5 years, I feel like it would be smart to just have it be like standard to like check in and go like, okay, like what's coming up for you? Like, what do you notice you commonly fight over? How do you engage in conflict? How do you communicate what you're actually feeling? How are you staying connected? Because it does take a lot of work, not that it's like hard per se, but it's intentional to stay connected to someone. And so all of those things take skills, and they are learnable skills. And so to, to learn those things, which you do in couples therapy, at least in EFT, there's a lot of learning around communication and emotional regulation and meeting each other's needs. Yeah, I just think that it's so valuable. And yeah, I always, I not always, I often see couples who come, and often one person is kind of done, but the other person has convinced them to come. And often it does seem like a Hail Mary. It's kind of like, all right, well, if we get divorced, at least we can check off the list that like we've done this, which is sad. Because, and the other part of it too is often these relationships have been together for a decent amount of time, like you say,
Mm,
15 or 20 years. And now you're unpacking 15 or 20 years of issues that were little actually back then, but now they're a big deal because they've compounded and resentment has built, and that's a lot harder to unpack. So you said something about, is there hope for that? I think there is always hope. I actually do think that you can rekindle connection, you can dismantle resentment, but you both have to truly actually want that. And I think I really hope one day we can normalize, like, let's just, when something's a little off and you want to optimize it, go get help. Not when it's
mm.
like, we are in crisis, and if we don't do something, we're done. And maybe even if we do something, we're still done. It's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I love that reframe of optimizing when it is a little issue. I think that we are good at doing that in other elements of our life. Like potentially, if you've got, I don't know, like a sore wrist or something, you might go see the physio, or maybe like your car is making a weird noise and you're like, I'm going to take that into the mechanic and get it fixed before I break down on the side of the road. But when it comes to our relationship, it's like we have no concept of the fact that we can get help. And I think it comes down to what you mentioned earlier about communication being a skill. I feel like we don't think about it that way. We get very, and this is something that I talk about a lot on this podcast, is about language and our identity based language and how we talk about and to ourselves. If we are saying things like, I am a anxious person, or I have a short fuse, or whatever the thing is, if you're like, I am this, it's very fixed. We think I am bad at conflict. That's something, everybody says that, right? Because we never really got taught how to resolve conflict. That was never a subject in school, that we learn how to sit in a conversation and listen to the other person actively and try to understand their perspective. We don't do that. We just go off of what we saw our parents doing. And our parents, unfortunately, didn't get to learn this stuff either. So we're all just stuck in this loop of conflict happens, but we don't know how to deal with it. And so we just do whatever happens in our bodies naturally, which comes back to the attachment and whatever has happened in our history. And then when you're coming together in a couple and someone else has a different experience, then you're just like, the cycle just continues on and on and on. But instead, if we could look at it as, like you said, it's a skill, which means you could say instead, I'm not great at speaking up for myself yet, or I'm not great at it right now, but I would like to be. I would like to get better, and I know that if I practice and I do some, yeah, I practice having these conversations, and it's going to be messy and it's not going to go well, and I'm probably going to say it wrong, but at least I'm trying. And then to go into therapy and to have someone that can help you facilitate that conversation and makes space for you. That's one of my other favorite things about EFT, is the way that it will focus on, like, the therapist we'll focus on one person, say for half or even more than half of the session, and really dive into their experience. So it's not like I'm talking, my husband's talking, I'm talking, my husband's talking. It's like half an hour of just me speaking to the therapist and really digging deep into what's actually happening here. What's the root fear? What is the root kind of cause? And a lot of times we have not ever put words to that stuff, right? Like, so that's all brand new for us. And it brings up a lot of emotions because we're like, whoa, I didn't even realize that that you didn't do the dishes was tied to the fact that when I was 6 years old, I don't know, I got deprioritized because there was all this other stuff going on. Like, who knows, you know? Um, but when we do that and you get to listen to your partner go to that depth and you're not going, hang on, no, this is my perspective. Because it's not about, like you said, it's not about that. It's about really getting to the root of that person's experience. And then you get to turn and share that with your partner and say, hey, what you see on the surface is me getting angry about the dishes. But what's actually happening is that I feel abandoned or I feel that my needs don't matter, whatever the story is. And then all of a sudden, there's like so much safety and openness because you're coming from a place of vulnerability instead of reactiveness. But we can't get to that point if you can't even see communication as something that could be changed or improved. And that I think often contributes to the stigma around therapy because people are just like, I am who I am and they are who they are. And these things about them annoy the absolute heck out of me. And that's just it. And like, we're just going to continue down this path for the rest of our lives until maybe something so explosive happens that we feel our relationship is over, or I think also equally as sad, we're like not that happy and not that fulfilled, but we're just coasting. When there is an opportunity for you to unlock this whole other level of connection and closeness with your partner, which I think is, yeah, like just speaking from my personal experience, it has completely changed everything for us in the most beautiful, amazing way.
Yeah. I think when you said like it's so easy to just coast, that I think is why I am really passionate about couples because I think so often we just survive or just go along instead of like truly thrive.
Mm.
And like it's just a step up to be able to get to thriving. And that step is actually like very attainable because like we're saying, like it's skill based. Like we don't know how to communicate because we don't even know how to identify for ourselves what we're feeling. Like we don't know how to go over we we don't know how to go beneath the surface. We just spend time fighting at surface level about the dishes or about laundry or you know,
All the
yeah, being
mundane.
late, all the mundane things. But really there's important things to be noticed underneath, and the first step is actually us noticing what the underneath thing is. So, yeah, like you say, sometimes it's just working with one person to figure out, like, what is beneath this kind of for you. And then after you figure that out, then you can express it to someone else. Well, then another like difficult factor in all of that is we don't also know how to listen without getting defensive. And defensiveness
Yeah.
massively can inhibit communication. But it feels natural and we were never taught how to respond a different way. And so, yeah, I mean, there's actually a lot to communication other than just saying what's on your mind.
Yes, totally. And I think that's what's so amazing about the work that you do because you create the space for couples to be able to break apart these different skills and get opportunities to practice them with someone there to support them. So it's not about going from 0 to 100 and going, okay, well, right now you can't communicate and now you need to be able to do everything perfectly. It's like, well, let's break apart this element of the cycle and what's going on. And let's practice kind of talking through this part. Okay, now we're starting to be able to close the length of this negative cycle, right? Instead of it going over a couple of days, now we can kind of come back and reconnect after an hour or something. It's like, okay, now we've done that little part. Now let's dive deeper and go into this other element. And we're going to help you. Yeah, we're going to talk about how we can be less defensive when something comes up. That's like you said, we have not been taught how to do this. So it would be weird if we all could do it because no one's taught us. We don't really have a model for how to do it. There's just been generations of families that haven't had the opportunity to learn this stuff, and it's not anyone's fault. It just is. But now there are means to be able to get support with this and to have someone sitting in the room. I think that's been so helpful for us is like when we need to have hard conversations, especially since becoming parents, where there's just so much more you have to navigate as opposed to just being you and your partner. And you would know this, obviously, having kids as well, that having someone else just sitting in the room to go, okay, like let's really untangle this whole situation. What's really going on? Doing it in the session, having that support. And our therapist will often say, like, let's do the reps in here so that you can go away and do the reps outside. And I talk about reps a lot on this podcast. It's like one of my core beliefs is like everything is a skill, everything can be learned through reps. You have to be willing to suck because everyone has to start at the starting line. And then you do the reps and you eventually get better and you start to notice things and, and you can start going, maybe you're defensive in the moment. And then right away you go, oh, that wasn't how I wanted to respond then. Can we just try that again? Like that might be the first few times where like you still react, but then you catch yourself. Whereas maybe before you had no awareness that you were even doing that. And then maybe 20 more reps down the line, you maybe start to say something and then you stop yourself and you're like, hang on, I'm feeling really reactive. I just need to take a second. Right. And then you can continue to go from there. So I love that you said that because I feel that, again, it's just something that we don't think about. We think that we just need to be good at it. And if we're not good at it, then it must just not be something that we can ever do. But the work that you're doing with couples and with moms is directly showing people that you can learn and you can shift the way that you communicate with your partner. And the coolest thing ever is that this will then trickle down into other relationships as well.
Yeah, I love it. I feel like, I mean, the material in the courses that I primarily have taken on EFT are couples related, but I bring a lot of the tools into even individual sessions because, yeah, there is so much of our attachment style showing up with our partners, but with other people. And then there's also the emotional regulation part of like, what's actually going on here for me that's beneath the surface. And so I don't think that like the skills that you learn in EFT are only for couples. I think it's applicable to life with literally everybody, to parenting. Yeah, any human relationship. I think the skills that you learn with EFT can be relevant for sure.
Yeah. I've had experiences both with what you just said, like being able to go, what's coming up for me. I've had a few experiences where I felt a really big emotion where previously I would have just maybe come off as passive aggressive, or I would have gone to someone and been like, oh, like what's going on with this? But instead being able to go, whoa, like I am feeling some really big emotions right now. What the heck is this about? And it is really grounding to be able to do that and then to almost just give yourself a little bit of comfort and go, okay, that makes sense why that's happening. Like it sounds so simple, but it is very profound to be able to do that. And I've also noticed like with other family members for me where there's been situations that I've been able to, instead of jumping in and like, oh, you just need to do this, this, and this, and you need to change these things about yourself, which never works anyway. And that's probably what I used to do. But I've noticed a few instances in particular where I've been able to go, oh, it sounds like there's something big coming up for you right now. Like, let's, whatever, however I said it wasn't perfect, but it created this opening for that person to go, actually, and then boom, 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 all of these things that potentially they wouldn't have been able to talk about or that I wouldn't have been able to hold space for. But because I've learned about EFT and I've had the opportunity to practice with my husband and then also with myself, it has had this beautiful, beautiful impact with, yeah, like you said, with any human relationship. I think it is just such a powerful way to approach therapy and such a powerful way to approach emotional regulation, because you're teaching yourself that it's okay to have the emotion and it's okay to make space for it. And that by making space for it and talking about it, like you mentioned earlier, that is actually what allows it to soften and to shift and to become something different. Because instead of that primary emotion that you might be stuck in of, I'm so angry all the time, I'm so angry at this person and this thing, it's like, oh, I'm actually really scared of not being good enough, or I'm scared that things aren't going to work out for me. Like that's a totally different emotion than what's sitting on the surface. But if you don't have like a space to be able to dig into that, you might not even realize that it's there.
I think a huge part of all of it is just curiosity. And like you talked a lot about like reps and stuff like that. And really, it's like we rush to fix things, and it's ideal if you fix things. But it's also like just let yourself be in the process. Like when a couple comes and I explain, how the cycle works, I always like take the pressure off and go like, we are not trying to stop this cycle from happening. We are not like trying to make you respond the right way and you respond the way that your partner wants you to. We are just trying to pause and notice, like, oh, I'm entering that cycle. And even if you do it at the end and you're like, we just went through a cycle, like your awareness is step one. And it's like, yes, you've accomplished something if you can do that. So, but it's part of the process because you have to bring awareness to it first. And yeah, the curiosity and digging deeper, even if it happens after, like you're reflecting back and you can kind of like bring awareness to it. That's step one. And then you bring awareness in the moment, and that's step two. But it's really just creating space to be curious, for it to be messy, and for you to just like be present in the process, not just like a passive participant in it, because that's really what the cycles are all about. You just natively do what you do. You respond because of your attachment. You react out of proportion, and then they bounce off of that because they're triggered in their own ways, and then off you go, and you're just caught up in it instead of like present in it. And I think, yeah, EFT just helps you be present in the process of it. And I think curiosity is a big, big part of all of that.
I love the word curiosity. Like when you think about what does it mean to be curious? To
Mm-hmm.
me, I think of it as being open and like almost wondering, instead of going into something with a known kind of judgment or answer or outcome. Like you're already like, I already know what this is. And I feel like for myself, and I'll just speak for myself, I won't speak for other couples, but definitely in my relationship, I had a lot of things that I was like, this is what's happening. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing all these things and I'm trying so hard. And then he's doing this. And this is, letting me down, and creating this story that like he's doing something wrong or whatever. Right. Whereas when you learn about the cycle, one of the interesting parts about curiosity is that it's not just about curiosity for the other person and like what's happening for them, but it's also curiosity for yourself in how are my actions contributing to this cycle? Because it is never just, well, I shouldn't say never, but is often not just one person that's doing all of the wrong and the other person is incredible and perfect, and the cycle's just somehow including the second person, right? My understanding is that more often than not, something happens, like someone starts it, whether it's a comment or a look or an action or something that doesn't happen, and then the other person has some sort of a reaction as well, whether that's yelling or whether that's just like completely withdrawing and saying nothing. And I think sometimes we can think, well, I'm just withdrawing, I'm not saying anything, so I'm not doing anything. But it's like, well, no, but that is doing something. That is, because that sends a message to your partner of whatever the message is. But that still counts as something. And then the cycle continues. And it's not until you can use that lens of curiosity and come and look at the cycle and go, okay, what are all the elements that happened? Okay, he did this, but I did this. And that wasn't ideal either. So it's an opportunity to take accountability for the fact that, and it's not, and like you said, it's meant to be messy. It's not about you're wrong, we're both bad people. It's not about that. It's just about going, well, the reason that I reacted this way was because of this thing. The reason you reacted this way was because of this thing. Oh, no wonder we're on completely different pages. No
Yeah.
wonder we aren't seeing eye to eye on this, because we have completely different life experiences that are coming up in this moment. But being able to use curiosity, I just love the word. I just like, even saying the word, I'm just like, it just makes me feel open. Like, what could be happening, instead of, I already know that he did this to me, or he thinks this about me. EFT allows you to go, just strip all that stuff away, the stuff that doesn't actually matter, and get to the heart of the issue. And like I already mentioned it, but it just creates this sense of vulnerability. And when you have that vulnerability, it totally diffuses the defensiveness. Because if you feel like someone is truly opening up to you, and you care about that person, you're going to be like, whoa, like, I want to hug you. I want to comfort you. Like, I'm
Yeah.
so sorry that you've been feeling that. Like, I don't want you to feel that way. How can I support you? And then it's a totally different conversation than you would be having before, of like, well, this, you said this, you said this, whatever. Um, but curiosity, I think, is absolutely key. And the work that you do as a counselor, I think, is crucial for creating a space for people to have curiosity. Because I don't think that we really practice that skill very much either. Because again, I feel like we're very, not stuck, but we are stuck. We're stuck in the ways that we think, and so we look at everything with like just a snap judgment. We're like, this is what's happening here. This person's doing this to me, and that's just the truth of the matter. Um, but having someone like you in the room can just like totally change the entire atmosphere, which is, yeah, why I think the work that you're doing is so important and so amazing.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I feel like even I didn't fully understand the extent of what therapy even was and how it can support people. And I think we aren't very good at being curious. We do tend to jump to, they looked at me this way, that means this. They did this,
Mm,
that means that. But we also do that for ourselves. We very quickly jump towards judgmental statements about ourselves. Because I work with moms, often it's like, wow, I'm a bad mom. And it's like, we hop to that so quickly, and we would
yeah.
never say that. I would never say that to someone else. I would never even honestly think about it to someone else. Like, even if your kid's
Mm,
screaming in the parking lot, I'm actually not thinking like you're a bad mom. I'm like, wow, I have been there. So, but we hop there instead of going to curiosity. Um, and I think that's, for me, probably one of the biggest skills that therapy has taught me, and that has allowed me to cultivate like so much more self-compassion. Because even when you want to hop towards, I'm a bad mom, it's like, well, what's beneath that? And you get curious, like, well, obviously being a good mom matters to me. Maybe I yelled, I don't know. Maybe I didn't show up the way that I wanted to. So that's actually giving me information. Like, I don't want to be a mom that yells. That's a much more helpful statement. Like, ooh, I messed up. That's not how I want to
mm,
show up as. That's a way
mm.
more helpful thing. But we don't get there unless we're curious. And yeah, I'm a big believer in curiosity to foster relationship with others, but also to just like foster a sense of like love and care for yourself. And I think that's a skill that I was never taught. I think that's a skill that like society is just like not really taught. And so that's another thing I think that therapy can like really support.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that you said that. What a beautiful sentiment, because it is so true that we are incredibly fast to talk really negatively about ourselves and create, like you said, these identity-based statements, not just I said the wrong thing, or I lost my temper and I yelled at my kid, versus I'm a horrible mom. That's yeah, like you said, it's a completely different statement. But the I think one of the only ways that we can really, unless you're really switched on and aware, which, let's be real, if you're a first time mom or a mom with young kids, a lot of us are just surviving a lot of the time. If our kids aren't sleeping well, they're sick all the time, or just the general dysregulation that comes with kids screaming all the time. It's a lot to then, on top of that, be self aware and just naturally pull that out of yourself of like, oh, that's interesting that I said that. I wonder where that came from. Like, like it is a skill, and it is not something that we have seen or talked about. It's not really talked about at all. But if you can get into a space where you have a therapist to walk you through that process and to teach you, like literally teach you the skills of how to be compassionate, because it is a skill. And
Mm-hmm.
again, we are so quick to judge ourselves and be like, well, I suck at talking to myself. Like, even that is like, you're creating a story that you suck at being kind to yourself, instead of going, wow, this is really hard for me right now. I think I might need some support with this. This is something that I want to get better at. How could I get support from a therapist or from a coach or from someone in my life that I know that's really good at this already, that's already learned this skill? This is another thing that I talk about a lot on this podcast, is like, if there is something that you want to learn, look to who you can learn from instead of trying to figure it all out yourself. Ask the question of, who do I know that has already figured this out? And lucky for us, we live in a time where you can access a therapist online relatively easily. And someone like you can help a woman or a partnership be able to create opportunities to practice and get better at these things. But it is, yeah, it's just not something that comes naturally to us. And I hear it a lot too. And I often will pull my friends up if I hear them talking negatively about themselves. I can't help it, because I know how powerful our language is. Whether we think it or not, even if we say it in jest, like as a joke, our brain
Mm.
doesn't know the difference between a joke and being serious. So if we're saying like, "Oh yeah, I'm such a bad mom," like your brain is internalizing that language, and that's what then becomes your reality. And I don't think we're very good at actually speaking life into ourselves and being kind to ourselves and being positive about ourselves and going, wow, I did that really well. Or that was really messy, but I did a beautiful repair with my child after the fact. And how amazing that I was able to notice and do that. And I think having, whether it's a therapist, coach, whatever, like having someone that people can turn to and get support and get help with learning those skills is, yeah, I think the very first step, and one of the best things that you can do for yourself, because like we've talked about today, it will trickle down into all of the other relationships. But I love that you specifically focus on self-compassion, because I think, yeah, I just think especially for new moms, it is brutal the way that we talk to ourselves and the way that we think that we have to be, and if we can't uphold the standard, then we're bad.
One of my like go-to things is just like speak to yourself the way you'd speak to a friend, like someone that you genuinely care about. And yeah, would you say to another mom that you cared about, like, you're a really bad mom? Like, honestly, even if you saw, well, you would never say that. But like,
No.
even if you see someone struggling, you wouldn't be like, you're bad at this area. Like, I, and it's just not helpful language, but we speak to ourselves in unhelpful ways like all the time. And that's like another big part of my work, I would say, is untangling the stories that we tell ourselves that are not helpful. And there's a shocking amount. Some of them have to do with attachment. They're like stories we learned early on, and some of them are new ones that we've kind of created. But the statement, I'm a bad mom, where does that lead you? It's just leaves you depressed, right? But the
Yeah.
statement, I'm not the mom that I want to be in this moment, you can work with that. You have a direction to go with that story, but with the story, I'm a bad mom, you're just kind of stuck in that. And so
Mhm.
I always
Yeah.
tell people you have to believe the story that you tell yourself. So you can't just say, like, no, I'm the best mom ever, if that's, not how you're feeling. You have to ground yourself in something that's true, but something that's helpful. Like, yeah, I have been yelling more than I want, and that's not how I want to show up for my kids. It's like that can be true, and you can still move forward from that statement towards now what am I going to do about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Creating opportunities for growth or shifting or some kind of movement from I'm not a bad mom is like all encompassing. That's just who I am versus yeah, I'm working on increasing my tolerance for yelling or something like in terms of I mean like if the kids are yelling or something where you don't get dysregulated as quickly. And I love that. I think it is so important the way that we speak to ourselves. And this is something that we learn in therapy, whether we're doing it individually or whether we are doing it as a couple. And the amazing thing about doing it as a couple is that you then have this partnership that's getting stronger and getting closer. And as you inevitably have to face external things, you can come back together and go, hey, remember when we talked about this in therapy and we talked about how important it is to have compassion? It seems like you're being really hard on yourself right now. Can
Hmm.
like then you have like someone else that you can
Yeah.
um, have that safe space with. So I think all of this really ties together that essentially what we're saying is therapy does not have to be something, and please don't let it be something that can only be a last resort option. This is
Yeah.
something where it's not like you have to go and then go for 50 sessions and once you start you can never go back. Like you've said that you've had clients where they come for a few sessions and then maybe they stop for a bit and then maybe they come back for a bit, and it doesn't have to be all or nothing, black or white. It can just be like, hey, let's go dive into this, and like you said, check in and see how we're doing. We're 3 years into this marriage. Let's see if there's any kind of cobwebs that we could potentially pull
Yeah.
apart and clean up so that it is a small issue and not something massive, where we don't even know if we're going to be able to come back from it or not.
I think, yeah, when you seek help, both individually or for a couple, when you're not in crisis, you're actually able to like learn and integrate. And if you think about it, like when you're in crisis, you're in like fight or flight. Like you're not in a state of learning and growing. You're just like there to like make it. And there are times where we have crisis and therapy can be so great for that. But like you can also just recognize, there's things in my life I want to optimize, or there's things in our relationship that I would like to optimize. And so, like, yeah, let's address it now before it is a problem. Because sometimes when you wait until it's a problem, then like your system isn't even like prepared to learn and grow because you're in fight or flight. You're kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah, activated, burnt out, not in growth mindset necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like then a lot of what you're doing is almost supporting people to get back to, like, if they're in that crisis mode, you're supporting them to get back to baseline. And then it's like, okay, now we can go deeper and we
Yeah.
can have some growth happening because we've dealt with the fight or flight. Oh my gosh, everything's falling apart. We've gotten you back to a place where you both feel safe. Now we can really go into the depths of what are the specific things that are coming up for you guys that is going to make you be able to approach a season of hardship a lot more effectively in the future.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know, doing your training ahead of your race, not just like hopping into the race. You know? It's like
Yes.
you've prepared. So then when a crisis hits, you're like, wait, we literally deal with conflict all the time on a micro level. So like this bigger one we can figure out because we figured it out these times before, even if it's smaller circumstances. just gives you more tools to kind of like fall back on, and it becomes more automatic. Like you're saying, like when you practice something, you just start to like get into the groove of it. And yeah, at the start that might be messy, but it's hard to practice, I think, if you're in crisis. It's kind of learning the skills and practicing them when you're not in the heat of the moment needing them necessarily, which is fine. You can learn them then too. But I just feel like I really want to advocate for learning the tools and the skills before you need them.
The point that you just made about the, we've done all these micro experiences of conflict. Now we can apply that learning to the bigger moment of conflict. That reminded me of a very similar concept of just anything. When you're learning how to do something, you don't just go straight into the hardest level, whether it's a video game, whether it's a sport, whether it is I don't know, like a board game or like anything. Like you have to start at level 1 and then you practice and then you start to notice patterns and you start to get more confident. It starts to become a little bit more automatic. And then you go to the next level and then you get to keep practicing and going. So then by the time you get to the championship game, which in this case would be like a major conflict situation, crisis is happening, you've already done all of this practice. You have put in so much effort and time. Your body knows what to do. I think that is such a cool way of framing it, because we can understand and conceptualize that when it comes to something like a sport. Like if you start soccer as a kid, you're going to be like on the team, whatever, with like all the other little kids, and you're just kicking the ball around and probably doing cartwheels and whatever. It's just like, it's not a big deal. But then you eventually, maybe you get into like high school and you're on like the varsity team or whatever, and then maybe you get into a university or college and you're playing at that level, and each level you're like, yeah, well, I've got more skills that I've stacked up, so of course I'm ready for this next level. But I wouldn't be ready for this level if I hadn't done that foundational work. And it's the exact same with communication. It's the exact same thing. We have to go through the process and give ourselves opportunities to mess it up, to kick the ball and it goes in the complete wrong direction and go, oh well, like that didn't go the way that I wanted it to. Like imagine if we were able to give ourselves that much grace when it comes to relationships, and be able to go, well, if I do 100 more practices of this, it'll probably be less messy. 100 practices from now, I'm going to be better at being able to understand your perspective. And instead of reacting, I'm going to be able to respond and make space for you. And I think it is such an empowering way to look at it, where you can see it like a sport. Like we are practicing this sport. And the important thing about being in a sport is that you have to have a coach. And in this particular example, we're talking about a therapist. So you mentioned before that when you get into baseline, that's when you can really start to grow. And a lot of people will maybe or often will go away from therapy because we're like, oh yeah, we're good now. We're like at baseline. But like that's the moment where having a therapist is going to take you to the next level. Just like how an athlete knows if they want to get to the highest level, they're going to have a coach. Olympic athletes have coaches, right? So they obviously understand the value. They see the value in having someone be able to go, hey, do a little bit less of this, try this, adjust this, shift this, go again. And that's what a therapist does, but with your mind, with your communication, with your ability to regulate your emotions and talk about what you're feeling and put words to the experiences that you've had in your childhood that you didn't even realize were still like having a grip on you. So yeah, I just think that is such a cool way of thinking about it. And it feels really empowering for me to go, yeah, okay, like this is the whole point. This is why we're here. We are here to learn. We are here to grow. And we need someone that's experienced and knowledgeable that's going to be able to guide us through this process.
Yeah. And I think like when you say it is empowering, I just feel like there's so much hope, because we hear like, oh, the divorce rate is so high, and we maybe even look around and go like, ooh, like, is that what a relationship is like? There's like so many examples of, just surviving, not thriving, or even like in my work, when you see what the statistic is on like how many people cheat, it's like, oh my word, it's shocking how bad relationships can go. And we hear about that like all the time. Or we might even think like, maybe I married the wrong person. Like, this is brutal. Or maybe you just didn't learn how to hear them out. Maybe they don't know how to hear you out. Maybe you don't know how to identify your conflict cycle and then step out of it and work as a team instead of just a participant in this kind of like tornado. And I just feel like it's so empowering and there's so much hope because like there's like a huge body of research on like what helps relationships thrive. And that would be kind of like a different form of therapy. Like the Gottmans have done a ton of that research. And that's even apart from communication. It's like rituals help keep couples together. Like going on a monthly date night or something, like just having something that's automatic that you don't think about. But they have a whole body of research of what tears down a relationship, what builds a relationship. And with EFT, all of those skills, it's like those things are learnable and they're replicable, which means there's hope. And I think that's kind of like, I don't know. I think it's actually really exciting. And that's why I'm really passionate about it because we hear all the negatives and we might even see the negatives, but it's like, but also there is a lot of hope because it's something that can be learned.
Absolutely. I could not have said that better myself. That was amazing. Thank you for that and for coming on here and talking about all of this. It's very clear how passionate you are and your clients are so lucky to have someone like you in their corner helping them through all of this. Yeah, you're just clearly amazing at what you do. I want to leave this episode with a little practical tip for our listeners, just something if someone listening wants to improve their relationship right now, what's one place that they could start? One little thing that they could do? Maybe they can't get into therapy right now, or maybe they're going to start looking into it, but what is something that they could actually start today to start improving their relationship?
Yeah. I think for me, the heart behind EFT is really just like heart to heart connection and staying connected. And so um pairing that with I guess actually some of the work of the Gottmans with the rituals, I am a really big advocate for making sure that you would have daily like a daily touch point with your partner, whether that's even 5 minutes or 10 minutes, where it's just like, how was today for you? Like, how was it really? Like, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? And maybe that some days it's like it is only like even 2 minutes, but it's intentional. And some days it might be 2 hours, but it's like every day we will do some sort of a check in with each other and have it be at the same time. So, again, the thing with a ritual is like you take out all of the like hard work of like, when are we going to do this? What are we going to do? It's like when our head hits the pillow at the end of the day, we're going to make sure that we check in with each other, whether that's 2 minutes or whether that's 10 minutes. And if you go to bed at different times, when the first person goes to sleep, maybe just go lay with them for 2 minutes and do a little check in. I am a big believer in the little like daily check ins. And I think it's the intentionality that goes a long way. And I think that's really important for parents because so often I hear like, we just don't have time for each other. And that might be true. That is true often, with broken sleep and with, just different schedule of having a baby in your life. But at the same time, I think it's safe to say, even on our craziest day, we can find 2 minutes. And so that would be my kind of little takeaway is to be intentional to find time to go heart to heart.
Amazing. That's so amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And, there might be someone out there that was exactly what they needed to hear right now. So I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate you for taking the time to come on the show and to share your experience, share your passion for this work. Like I mentioned, it's very clear in the way that you speak that it's something that means a lot to you. And I think you made the right choice moving from education into counseling because the impact that you are going to be able to have on moms and on families, I think is just going to be absolutely incredible. So thank you again for coming on. Just before we wrap up, I just wanted to ask or say, if anyone that's listening is in Central Alberta and is looking for a counselor, how can they get in contact with you? Where can they find you?
Yeah, I do have a website. It's just www.counselingbybrooklyn.com. You can look me up, just Brooklyn Ebenal, and I'll pop up on like Psychology Today. Yeah. And I also really think finding a therapist that's a good fit for you, and like I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea. And sometimes, unfortunately, it takes a while to find someone who kind of is your style. But don't give up, because once you find someone that like click with, I really do think it can be so powerful. But in the same way that we don't like share everything with everybody, like you're kind of particular with your best friend, or you're kind of particular about like, I don't know, who your favorite teacher was. It's not going to be the same for everybody. You just click with different people. And that's the same with therapists. So whether it's me or somebody else, I think it's worth the work of like finding someone that you really resonate with and click with. And unfortunately, that does sometimes take time, but I think it's worth it.
Thank you for finishing with that point, because it is, I think it's an important thing to say that, yeah, you might not get it right the first time. And just because the first person that you speak to might not be the right fit, or you might not get the right feeling, doesn't mean that therapy isn't for you. It just means that, yeah, you don't get along with every single person that you ever come in contact with. That would be weird. So I think, yeah, what you said, it is worth it to take a little bit of time. Don't worry about the therapist taking it personal. I'm a speech therapist, so I know I say the same thing with my clients. Like, it's not about us, it's about you, and it's about making sure that you're comfortable, because this work, especially as like in therapy, it demands you to be able to show up and to be honest and open. And so if you're not feeling that with someone, that's okay. So thank you for saying that, because I think it is such an important point, and something that I think we can also be very quick to be judgmental of ourselves for, or judgmental of the process, where we go, oh, well, this just isn't going to work for me because that therapist doesn't work for me. Well, so yeah, I think that's a great point. Was there anything else that you wanted to share before we wrap up today?
But I feel like we've covered so many topics. And yeah, I just appreciate you having me and inviting me to get my reps in talking about what I'm passionate about. And yeah, I
Yes.
really enjoyed that. So thank you for having me.
Of course, it was so amazing. And yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of this show, is giving ourselves opportunities to speak and to share our truth and to share our experience. So thank you again for coming on, and thank you everyone for listening. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will catch you guys in the next one.